I spent the better part of 10 years building a company that nearly took everything from me. This video is about where I started, where I'm at, and everything in between. Stay tuned. When I started my business in 2014, I think like pretty much any person who starts a business, I had high hopes and I was optimistic about the future, although I had no idea what the future would hold in store for me. Um, and I think a lot of what business owners and entrepreneurs as such has to do is to try and predict the future. But with my limited knowledge at the time, I didn't really have the tool set necessary to plan for the business and for the future. I had a vague idea of, or rather a dream of what I wanted to do, but I wasn't really sure about the execution and exactly what it was I wanted to do. I knew that internet connectivity in our country was a problem. At the time, we had a monopoly, and some new legislation that came into play made it possible for private companies to start playing in the telecommunications industry. And that was a game changer, I think, for the country as a whole, because now, anybody can become an internet service provider. It wasn't territory that a lot of people were familiar with, and least of all myself. I mean, I was an IT person at the time, not having a lot of knowledge and experience in the networking game. So I knew I wanted to play in this game, and I didn't really know how to participate. And I think, with maybe without all of the knowledge, or with more knowledge, things would have probably gone differently for me and for the business. But I decided to, to do the best thing I can think of and upskill myself. Not in business, but technically, because that was how I knew how to get myself ready for whatever. And I thought, the business side of things will sort of sort itself out. I need the technical skills because I don't know people. I don't have big networks. I'm not really a socialite per se. So I needed to figure out, how the industry works. And I've always been the type of person who really likes to get my hands dirty when it comes to learning new things and doing new things. I'm pretty much a self-taught professional. I don't have any formal university degrees. I do come from, like so many people in South Africa, I come from I wouldn't say a poor background, but we definitely weren't well off. I grew up in the west of Pretoria, which is not one of the more affluent areas in Pretoria. But I've always been intrigued by technology, and I actually have my grade 6 English teacher to thank for ending up in the IT game, because he triggered it. I wouldn't say he inspired it, but he triggered it within me. But that's a story for a different day. I don't want to digress too much. So being fascinated by technology, and especially information technology and communications technology, I went and I did a splicing course. I did the CFOT certification. which I followed with the CFOSDH from the Fibre Optic Association, which basically qualified me for FTTH, both building and planning. Um, but I didn't understand the game at all at that point. I've only myself had internet for a couple of years, and um, I didn't grow up with internet. So researching online wasn't really a natural thing for me, although I did learn a lot from online, but researching industries, and especially in South Africa with this industry, you won't find a lot of this stuff online. You need to become part of the communities, and that's something that I actually only figured out later in my, let's call it, in my career. um, and because anybody who you strike a deal with, um, especially fiber network operators, the first thing, they don't even give you pricing before you sign an NDA. When you're in the industry, eventually everything becomes common knowledge, but still, you need to sign an NDA before these guys will even send you their pricing, which is kind of ridiculous. There's only one or two networks of whom I've ever dealt with who don't do that. Um, so yeah, I mean, so the knowledge wasn't really that freely available, and at the time I was a little bit green. I mean, I've in my life I've never had a job that paid me more than 14,000 rand a month. Um, I didn't have a lot of work experience. I had 1 year work experience at another company, a job that I found myself, and the rest of the time, I've actually been working for my father-in-law. Because we did a lot of work in e-learning, so a lot of what I've learned, I actually learned from him business-wise. He's a very well graduated person, and very knowledgeable in a lot of things. Um, but I mean, everything I know is kind of his version of the world. So I made it my mission when he gives me advice nowadays. I do exactly the opposite of what he tells me. Not because he's wrong, but I kind of want to try, new things, and um, I'm I like figuring things out. So I need to see how it works, and then often I'm right, and or sometimes I'm not, and then that doesn't work out so well. Um, but yeah, so eventually, after starting the business, the only way I knew how to actually um, get into it was by getting my hands dirty, and I started splicing. Um, Only for a couple of months, I think 6 months or so, and yeah, there's a bit of a sickness in that industry where you they the guys who give you the contracts, they like handing out the work, but when it comes to paying invoices, um, you know, and I quit my day job. I couldn't do this while having a day job because it requires me, being available all the time. So I can't work for another company and do this work as well. Um, so I quit my job and I started this up, and we started off okay, but I didn't see a future in it. It's not that it's an overly competitive industry. Yes, there is a lot of companies and contractors and subcontractors who do this work, but um, yeah, it's just I couldn't see that I'm going to be able to grow a company sustainably, and just feed myself, let alone feed other people. And at the time, I was kind of pressed for income, so I had to make a plan. And these guys, You do the work, you wait 2 months for your payment, and I just decided there's no way. I can't do this. I need to try something else, and I basically terminated my agreement with the company whom we were contracted to. Um, and I thought, okay, I'm going to do my own thing. Let's do this on our own. Um, I very soon realized that in order to pay your bills every month, you need to find new clients every month, especially if you do your own thing. And we were too small. I didn't have all the certifications and health and safety files and God knows what else. Um, so the best way for me to actually do networks or build networks was to do it for companies who might be moving offices or expanding their offices, and it's difficult to get new clients. So I had to make a different plan. I actually started going to a business. I don't know if you can call it a business forum, but it's known as the Friday Club. It's actually a business networking breakfast that used to happen on Fridays. I joined my father-in-law, and I've gone to these meetings a couple of times. But on the first time, my father-in-law introduced me to the hotel manager, and I'm like, what? I couldn't fathom that I can just after the first meeting actually possibly sign up the hotel as a client, and I actually did. And signing up the hotel covered my basic costs. So that was a good start for me, and I actually saw the value in recurring income. Um, so now for me it was a matter of, okay, I'm getting recurring income. I'm able to pay my basic costs. At the time, actually, when I left my job, I put myself into debt review so that I can reduce my debt repayments, and that helped a lot. I mean, it almost halved my repayments, um, and the deal with the hotel covered that. So I needed to find more income, because obviously I didn't leave my job just to have one contract and just cover basic expenses. I actually had to eat as well. So at that time, things were still very new and very thin. We barely had any money. We couldn't buy groceries. My father-in-law, I owe him a big, um, what do you call it? Big debt of gratitude, um, because they actually helped us through that time in terms of getting food, and luckily we don't have any house payments and stuff like that. That's a different story, which I think I might not be sharing on this channel, but um, yeah. So it was basic sustenance, and I needed to find more business. So now I've got this client, and I need to figure it out. And one night, my wife and I, we were sitting and working, and getting some advertisements out and trying to get some business. But one of the pressing things was we had to cancel our DSTV, which was not that much at the time, but still expensive. I think it was like 600 or 700 rand a month. If you don't have it, you don't have it. But we want to keep a piece of, or a bit of humanity, and just be able to relax at night after you've had a long day of work, and be able to watch a movie or something like that. And so we discovered this product. It's a TV box, and which worked fairly well at the time. And for various reasons, we didn't sell it for very long, but um, it was a fairly popular product. But we soon realized that for this product to actually work properly, people needed proper internet. So coming back full circle to when I started the business, um, it still remained an issue because not a lot of people had proper internet. It was either ADSL, wireless, I can't even remember if we had a LTE in that at that time. Um, but even if we had, it was too expensive. I mean, you can't do streaming on LTE, or you couldn't because it was just uh, data costs were insane. Wireless was becoming popular. We didn't know it, but what we did know was that ADSL was not the answer. Most people could get a maximum of 2 megabits of bandwidth, which was really not enough for any kind of streaming. Um, yeah, so I started looking around, and there was a company operating in Pretoria at the time. They were also fairly new. Um, I'm not going to name any names, but any of you who do know me, you'll know who I'm talking about. Um, but I phoned him the next day, or I sent him an email. I can't remember, and I really quickly got a response back, and they said, "Yeah, sure, you can resell our services. Come through tomorrow, and we'll sign the agreements, and we'll get you going." And I was like, "Okay, well, let's give it a shot." Um, and I went through. I signed the agreements, and they actually offered me the ability to form or formulate my own product. And I thought, well, okay, this is great because now I can formulate products that doesn't compete with anything else in the market. There were other WISPs in the area. Um, so that's great, I can make my own deals and be competitive in that way. And we got free installs and we ran competitions, but before it even got to that, we got the products. I wasn't really sure how to sell them. And one day I told my wife, you know what, just make an advertisement. Let's put it on Facebook and we'll see what happens. Um, and she did. And the Thursday of that same week, I think, somebody commented on the thing, and next moment it went viral. And then we're like, okay, what the hell is happening? The phone started ringing. We worked right through the weekend. Um, we barely got any rest. We was so tired. And I'm like, okay, so there's real potential here. Um, and we started focusing on that. And I still did the TV boxes, but I don't know, the support on those things, and the software that they ran, and they generated a lot of complaints eventually. And I just decided, you know what, I'm not going to go forward with this. I don't think it's worth my while to sell these products. But we kept on with the wireless internet, and so I think, if I remember correctly, we started with this WISP in July of, I want to say, 2017, and it was, I think, in August where it actually started flying. Um, and by that December, the end of that December, we had over 200 subscribed clients on our reseller base. We quickly, just like that, we shot up, and we became their second largest reseller, next to the CEO's dad. I have no idea how he did it. Um, he also did the TV box thing and whatever, and but I mean, we quickly got up to almost to his level, and yeah. So and the thing that helped us there was the fact that we were able to formulate products that were unique to us at the time. We built a website, we put up forms, and I told my wife when this thing started flying, I told her, listen, we need to ensure that the sign up process, first of all, is as easy as possible. When a person is on the website, we want to get them to immediately fill in the form, because if they click away from the website, that client is gone, they're not going to come back. So you have to capture them right then and there, get them to fill in the contract. They shouldn't even phone us, to ask questions. Some of them will, but they shouldn't even get to that point. It must be that easy. And we spent time on it, and I think we got it done very, very fine, to the point where we would get like 20 applications a week, with about a 50% install rate due to line of sight and other issues. But probably 20, 22, 25 a week on a good month. And we just flew, to the point where these guys actually had to build more high sites and add more teams. Maybe not single-handedly, but I think we contributed quite a bit to almost breaking their network, especially in the area that we stayed in, because that was where we sold at the time. But so that's basically where the whole ISP thing began. And I think almost naturally in South Africa, that's where most ISPs begin. Because just going out and building the infrastructure, if you don't have investor capital or some sort of capital, then it's a very expensive thing to do, which I learned later on, and that's a story that I'm getting to, and that's basically what almost broke us. But that's where you start, and you grow towards a point where you have enough clients that will be able to sustain the cost and still bring in profit. But being an ISP in South Africa, and I almost think anywhere in the world, is a highly competitive game. There are so many players, especially in South Africa. I don't even know the numbers. I think we've got over 200 or 300 in South Africa. I mean, it's a small country. So it really makes it difficult. And after the wireless thing, the wireless thing happened just right before guys like OpenServe started rolling out big fiber networks, before it became really affordable and really available. So the wireless thing was very short-lived, and I knew it, because when I started the company, it was right at the time when Vumatel Vumatel was the first commercially available FTTH network in the country. And I was kind of following the news on that, and I've always known that this is going to be something that will someday happen, and when it happens, it's going to be awesome. So the wireless thing was sort of leading up to that, and it was the perfect opportunity to ramp up for fiber. So you would sell clients in an area where there's only DSL or nothing, and then you can kind of drive the fiber networks towards those areas. And if you build your own networks, then you get the clients on wireless. When you've got enough, you build the fiber, and the infrastructure is sorted. That was sort of the strategy in the country at that time, especially for the newer networks, like Eurotel. They kind of drove it that way as well, and it worked great for them. So we were doing fairly well, and in 2018, towards the end of 2018, if I can remember correctly, I got this opportunity to actually build our own fiber networks in two complexes here in Gauteng, in Sandton. Um, and I didn't need to fork out any capital for it. There was a developer who paid for it, and that was awesome. So we took that opportunity. We built the network, and we operated for about 2 years, maybe 3 years. No, it was about 2 years until 2021. The same guy, a friend of mine, who actually built the network, he came to me and he had this tender, and it was for a fiber network in the same area for new complexes. And I don't think he realized what it was at the time, but when I saw this, my heart sank into my shoes, if that's the right term to use. I couldn't believe what I'm seeing, because we have these complexes, and here I'm sitting with a tender document where there's a plan to build almost a small town, and we have the opportunity to go in and build the network and operate the network, but we have to tender for it, and we have to tender for the business that we already have, the networks that we already have. And I told him, listen, this is trouble, because who are we? These guys, they're a developer, and they might now actually bring in third parties. That's why they're going out on tender. So we're in trouble. If we don't get this, we might lose all of our clients, because we don't have infrastructure to interconnect with a third-party fiber network operator. At the time, we were only set up to operate in that area for that complex. I didn't even have any infrastructure in the Terraco data center. So if we lose the business, if another network comes in, I lose the business. If I don't build the infrastructure, then it's either don't do anything or do something, but it's going to cost money. And at that time, we were still very small. I mean, we had like, I'm not counting the customers that we had on the resale network, because that was a separate thing. We didn't invoice customers. Our own customers at that time, we had just over 100. And I mean, that's a small amount of clients, but that was where the majority of our income came from. And I had just employed a technical guy who helped me a lot, really competent guy, and it was a valuable resource, and we were only just starting to make money, but not enough to actually do something productive with it. We were sort of coasting along, and when COVID came along, we had a bit of a growth spurt, reselling fiber for another white label ISP. But so the difficult decision that we had to make was, are we going to do nothing, or are we going to install infrastructure in Terraco, do the interconnect? I know we don't have the money. I know we're going to have a capital shortfall. Where we had surplus money, we were definitely going to go into the red. But if I don't do it, I don't have any fighting chance, because the margins on the fiber reselling was so slim, and it still is. It's not really lucrative to resell fiber because it's such a competitive industry. It's a lot more competitive, I think, than wireless or LTE, because these networks are open access and everybody's competing for the same clients. So the other option was, we built the infrastructure, and we have a fighting chance. So me, being all panicky at the time, I was a bit cool-headed, but I was also panicky. I decided, okay, you know, we don't have a choice, but I'm going to wait it out and see, maybe we can do something and um, negotiate some sort of deal so that we can still operate on the network that we built. And the property developers, unfortunately, they just said, no, sorry, these new guys, open access fiber network, they're going to come in here and they will build the network. They're going to do the whole thing. And if you want to keep your clients, you have to service them through this network. And yeah, so that was towards the end of the year. So I had about a month or two to actually build the infrastructure. But I took the decision. I said, okay, we'll worry about the financial fallout later, which in retrospect is a little bit cowboyish. But I did it, and I got infrastructure in Terraco, and I decided that we're not going to do just this one network. We will add two others, but larger networks, so that we can add more clients from them onto our network as well. But one of the problems is we're a small company. Like, it's literally me, my technical guy, and my wife. We're three people. We have to do marketing, we have to do customer service, we have to do everything. And so these networks, and especially the guys that came into this area taking over all of our clients, and by the way, using parts of our infrastructure, they all have these minimum commitments. So you have to, within a certain amount of time, you have to reach a certain amount of sales. And if you don't, they have so they will say, for instance, you have to reach 50,000 Rand worth of active subscribers. And if you don't have 50,000, you will pay in the difference between what you have and what the minimum commitment is. This is a standard for most FNOs in our country. And some of them, some of the big guys are really almost impenetrable. You just cannot deal with these guys because their minimum commitments are insane. You need millions and millions of rands worth of human capital to get the customers so that you can skip paying the minimum commitment. It's insane. Okay, so but with these guys that I signed up, it was not that bad, and I said, okay, well, we'll deal with them as well. So I signed the minimum commitments. Luckily, on this other fiber network that took over our stuff in Sandton, we had a couple of clients. So we were able to work out some sort of deal with them, and they reduced our minimum commitments and all of that. So that helped a lot. But now I had 3 networks where we had to get clients. Luckily, the one network had no minimum commitments, which was fantastic, but the network is extremely difficult to sell on. The other network, we didn't know that. The other network had a minimum commitment, a bit easier to sell on, and their network was expanding at the time, which is great because an expanding network brings you new clients. An existing network, once it's been there for a couple of years, it sort of settles down, and you only get customers whenever people are moving in and out of the area. So these guys, I think, were a very appropriate partner at the time. So now we had this growth, but I have the problem that there was almost, well, I can't remember the exact amounts. In fact, I don't even think I ever checked it because it was so much I was too afraid to know. I think I'm still too afraid to know. But the initial costs of building the infrastructure was way above anything that we would have been able to afford at the time. I mean, We didn't even have savings money. We just had enough money to pay all our accounts and some extra for R&D and a bit of development and advertising and all of that. But we didn't have a surplus. We weren't rolling in the cash at the time because, for all intents and purposes, it was a startup company still, starting up for the third time, by the way. So now I have to add these customers, and I'm no longer making 70% profit on the clients I had. I'm only making 20% if I'm lucky, give or take, at gross profit. And so for about 3 years, this was so that network in Sandton got switched on towards November. Yeah, it was November in 2021. 2022, we started selling on these networks officially. But up until last year, we were not able to pay the full account for the fiber network in Sandton. In Sandton. And so we got behind. And for about 2 years, we got behind and we stayed behind. I paid what I could, but there were no money. And because of the whole way that we lost our business, maybe I was a little bit petty, but I was like, you know what, bugger you guys, you made my life difficult. So I'm not going to worry about paying the full amount, full account, or as much as possible. I will pay you what I'm comfortable paying because I have to live. My employees have to live, and so just be rustig, just be patient, and yeah. So, but eventually I think these guys actually also ran into some financial trouble because it's the industry we're in. I don't know of one company in this industry that hasn't been sold at least once due to financial issues. They go into a growth spurt, they accumulate debt or they accumulate deficits, and they have trouble paying their accounts. So it gets sold off, new investors, and these guys, for a fact, I know that they have changed hands a couple of times. And I mean, they've been doing layoffs recently, so I know that, and they even almost, I wouldn't say they said as much, but in a meeting that I had, they started sending us final demands, and they're going to switch off our clients, and we need to pay. And it's over 200 clients. I'm a small company. I don't have extra cash to fork out. I can barely pay these guys. So we need to make a plan and find some sort of way to pay them. I was looking for investors, but the financial position that the company was in at the time just didn't allow for investors. They would like, we'll take the clients, but you can keep the rest, or something like that. You're not going to find a good investor because, if we're honest about everything, it wasn't a good investment. I mean, you can't sink money into a money hole and then expect a return on your investment. That's not what investors do. Unless there's some massive potential, then you might get lucky. But that wasn't the case. And that's not the case with most of the companies in this industry. So they started becoming a little bit halstarrig, if I can use an Afrikaans word. And I had to make a plan. I couldn't find investors, not for like 10 or 20% investment in the company. But at one point, by the way, my account with these guys was in arrears like from the start. We owed them money from the start, and they were quite patient with us for about 2 years. And we did get some letters from them, letters of demand, and I managed to keep them at bay for some time. I did manage to make one or two big payments, um, but I was never able to fully pay the account on a continuous basis, let alone settle the outstanding amount. So I managed to keep them at bay for about 3 years until it really, really, really became a problem. I think they changed hands, and the new investors said you need to get this account paid, or otherwise they need to go, because we need to fix our cash flow. That's what I'm thinking had happened. I started talking to a lot of people. Their CEO actually arranged a meeting for me between me and some of the people that he knew who was looking for an ISP to buy. And they said, we'll take the whole company, make a fair price, and then we'll take the company. You'll work for us for 2 years, and then we'll get the company sorted out. But I wasn't comfortable with the deal, and I sat in a meeting with those guys. I listened to them, and I told them, look, this is a growing company, and we've been growing on a continuous basis for the past X amount of years. For the most part, we've doubled in size on a yearly basis. So why must I sell my whole company? It just didn't make sense to me at that time, and it still doesn't make sense to me. So I told him, listen, guys, if you're not going to make me a fair deal, I'm not interested. Please don't contact me again. I'm not interested. And then in August of 2023, I spoke to one of our existing clients, who is an IT company. They've existed since, I think, 1995, 1996, somewhere around there, 2005. Can't remember. And I told them, listen, guys, they were one of my important clients. They still are. And I was afraid to actually speak to them. I was afraid that I might lose them, which would be detrimental to the company, even though we were so far in the red. I don't think anything could have been more detrimental to the company than that. But I spoke to them and I said, listen, I'm in trouble. These guys are closing in on me. I owe them, at that time, it was closer to 900,000 Rand. Which is a lot of money for a small company with a turnover of 4 million Rand a year. And they said, okay, we're listening. And I was like, okay, I did not expect this, but right, let's talk. So I sent them a proposal. I told them, listen, my current deficit is about 50,000 Rand, if I remember correctly. Or it was, it was about 35,000 Rand. Take over my salary bill, take 49% of the company, and I think we should be fine. But they came back with a deal that was nothing that what I asked for. And I thought, geez, this doesn't really make sense, but okay, they are offering financial assistance, which is great because I need financial assistance. And the assistance that they offered was 300,000 Rand. And the rest we could probably make a plan for. I was able to get an overdraft on the business and a business loan. So I should have been able to settle that. But unfortunately, the deal with these guys took months. It took about 6 months just for them to get the contracts in place. By that time, in that time, I still had to get these guys to just calm down, or get them off my back, or pay them, or make some sort of plan. And so it was the November, and I spoke to the managing director of this company, and I told him, listen, these guys are demanding a deal. We need to make a plan. They're telling me that I need to settle the amount, paying them 100,000 rand a month. It was somewhere close to 100,000 rand a month for, I think it was 5 months or so. I don't have the money. Can you help me? And they wouldn't help me before the contract was in place. So I thought, okay, you know what, that's fair enough. I probably wouldn't either. So I said, okay, I can get a loan via a short-term loan company like Retail Capital or Lulaland. We actually use Retail Capital. They will give me 300,000 rand or whatever. Then I can use that money and just pay this company, what the settlement proposed settlement amount was on a monthly basis. And then we'll get the agreement in place and whatever, and we'll sort things out after that. And the guy said, yeah, sure. And eventually we signed the agreement. We transferred the shares. I got some financial assistance from them, but their explicit terms of what they call a drawdown facility was that none of the money from the drawdown facility were to be used to pay loans. Okay, so I had to be creative and pay a loan with my operational capital and then get money from them to pay my operational costs, which really just delayed my problem. All that these guys did was that they bought me time. Now, no offense to them, and I think they're still a great company. I like the people there, but I don't think that the deal was the right long-term deal. So towards the end of 2024, things got really tight. I mean, I didn't have this supplier on my back anymore. We managed to completely settle the debt with him, meaning that we now owe somebody else money, but that's a formalized agreement. And we need to ensure that these guys with a formalized loan agreement is paid. We need to ensure that all of our other suppliers are paid. But unfortunately, during that time where I was waiting for this investor to actually come on board, I had to refinance because I had to get more money because I didn't have money to pay the full term. I only thought initially that I'm going to need 100,000 because these guys promised me 1 month and we'll have the deal done. After that 1 month, we didn't have the deal done. I had to get more money. So a further, I think, 200,000 or 300,000 rand. And then after that, I had to get more money. So it just blew up. And we went from, in a space of a year, we went from zero formalized debt to over 1 million rand, 1.3 million rand of debt. And the company, if we had no debt, would have actually made enough money to sustain itself and be fairly profitable in terms of, it's maybe not fairly profitable, but there would have been more than enough money to pay all of the bills and have like 30 or maybe 50,000 rand a month left in the bank account, which I realize is not a huge amount of money, but it's way more than I could have ever said even before all of this started. So towards the end of the year, things started getting tight because we got to a point where these investors had a bit of a cash flow issue because 2024 was just really a terrible year. We had barely any sales. They had barely any business. And all of the promise that they made us in the beginning of the year, none of that realized because they didn't even get business for themselves that year. So that was not great. And it really put us in a very difficult position because we had all of these accounts to pay and nowhere to get the money. And we were growing the business, but not as quickly as we had anticipated. Our actual growth projections were about 25%, 20 to 25% per year for the next couple of years, because that's at least what we have been doing the past couple of years. But because of bad business, and you also need to account for the fact that I was under severe stress. I mean, we were still, at some point I actually had to retrench the technical guy that I told you about earlier. But in the meantime, I actually was under pressure from this supplier to employ a sales guy. And then things went wrong, and I had to make the decision to retrench the technical guy because I could do all the technical work myself. But the sales thing that's not my forte. I can do sales very well, but it's not my personality. It takes a lot out of me. I'm a bit of an introvert, which makes this video a little bit controversial. So I've gone through a hell of a time, and I mean, all of this stress, supplier threatening to shut you down, not being able to pay all of your accounts. I sort of shifted all of that towards these guys, but now I had to pay them and I had to make money, and it was difficult. And towards the end of 2024, we had to cut back so much of our own expenses. I had to cut my salary in half. My wife's salary was cut in half. And the sales guy's salary stayed intact at that time because I felt that, this guy is important to the business and he needs to be properly remunerated. Kept happy, made sure that he does his job well, because that's where the business's lifeblood is. But December 2024 was a really tough time. I mean, we cut our personal incomes from the business so severely that, I mean, for months we didn't have food in the house, but December was particularly bad. We literally ate bologna sandwiches for like the whole of December, with the exception of Christmas Day. I'm not sure how we afforded that, but at least on Christmas Day we had a fairly decent meal. But after that, it was difficult, and I nearly lost it. There were days where I had no motivation to do any work, to do anything, and not just December, but before that as well. You sit and you pay accounts and you realize, oh shit, this month, I've got these suppliers who are extra difficult and I can't pay them this month. And that's a problem, because if you can't pay them, they cut off your clients, and then you lose the clients, and then the business is gone. Everything you've worked for 8 or 9 years, just gone like that. And I try and be a very responsible person when it comes to my clients, and give them the best service, and be accountable to them, because essentially, I mean, without them there would be no business. So the thing that goes on in my mind is, if I can't pay my suppliers, I am charging these guys for a service that I can't deliver. So they're going to look at me as like, what are you doing with our money? And for me, that is like a big no-no. if you take money from people, you need to be responsible and use that money for what it was meant for. And whatever is extra, you're entitled to that. Nothing less. And nothing more, rather. Um, so, I mean, December was it was bad, it was difficult. It wasn't fun. I had the worst December in a long time. I haven't had great Decembers in a long time, but this 2024 one was horrible. And it went downhill from that, because came January, the first week after the sales guy returned, I had to give him an ultimatum and say, listen, we've come to the point where I have one of two choices. I actually need to retrench you, but I can offer you a position doing something differently in the company for half the money. Now, imagine you're the only breadwinner in your family, which is the case with this guy. He's the only breadwinner. He's got 2 children and a wife who is unfortunately not able to do a full-time day job. So his options are very limited. Now, I think people working on garbage trucks actually earn more than he does. And for me, that was a really difficult thing to do. And I think for him, it is still a difficult thing to do, because the situation from then until now hasn't really changed for him. So, and still in the beginning of the year, we struggled with one supplier to pay them, then the next supplier, and luckily these investors, they were able to help me a little bit, just to pay what was necessary, but I didn't see a way out of this thing, and it really got me down. When I started getting those letters of demand, for me it was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I really like what I do. I love what I do. I love the technical side of things. I have no problem working with the clients. I have no problem administrating the company. That's why I've kept at it so long. I mean, I'm not a guy to take a day job because it gets boring and repetitive and not challenging. I need a challenge. And the business for me is challenging enough to keep me interested and to keep me busy. And, it's not just the technical things, it's figuring out how to grow the business and seeing the results. I mean, that is so satisfying. I just got to the point where the financial stress was so much that I was willing to give up everything, because that was the only way out. I actually, at the end of last year, I thought, you know what, I'm going to do a TEFL course and I'm going to go overseas. And then I found out you need a BCom, which I don't have. So I actually enrolled for the BCom amid all the financial troubles. I said, well, we'll make a plan. The business will need to pay, even though the business can't pay. But I need to upskill myself. And it sort of started with the TEFL thing. And then I realized, but there's a lot that I don't know that this BCom is actually going to teach me, and help me structure the knowledge and the experience that I already have. Yeah, so I at the beginning of 2025, I went to, or I sent an email to the director of this investor, and I told them, listen, I can't do this anymore. I want out. So take over my shares or liquidate or whatever, but I want out. And they said, okay, um, we'll work on a deal. We'll take over all of the shares. We'll take over the company, and then we'll give you an employment contract, and we'll take it from there. Because for them, the whole thing actually was um, their own survival. Um, we actually are I want to say one of their critical suppliers, one of their more important suppliers, and if we fail, they lose a lot of business. So it was important to them that our company survives, um, and that's one thing, and I'll make a video about this as well. But um, that is one thing about investors that you need to know is that an investor, investors don't invest in your business for your interest. They invest in your business for their interest. And that's a tough pill to swallow because you're selling a part of what you worked for so that somebody else can, get the benefit out of it for their purpose. Yes, you get the money, you can use the money for your purpose. But by the way, I sold my share for R1 a share, and I got the drawdown facility. So I basically gave them the shares anyway. I could have just given them the rest. And then I was still at rock bottom. It just that shift, it did a bit of a mind shift for me. And I did get some relief from it. I felt better. I felt better than I felt in a long time. But I was still not able to properly buy groceries and stuff. So, it's tough. But at least now, for me, there was sort of a way out. And then that one Monday morning, I phoned my brother, and something I haven't done in a long time, and I spoke to him, and I just backed off and told him the whole story and got some moral support from him. And not long after speaking to him, my phone rang, and it was someone whom I've met back in 2017. He then worked at one of my suppliers, someone who's still a supplier for the business. And we kind of know each other. We've spoken about starting up an ISP and doing something interesting, which never really went anywhere. We sort of went our separate ways, and we haven't spoken a lot in the meantime. But out of the blue, he phoned me and he said, "Listen, how are things going?" And I told him my story, and he said, "Wait, don't sell your shares, or don't give your shares to these guys. You're giving up everything. I think that I have better opportunities for you. I have an ISP. We have a lot of customers. Let's get the shares and let's join forces." So important to note that the investor that I had up to that point was an IT company, and they actually did not have a lot of experience in our industry. So they didn't understand a lot of the nuances and how things worked. But this guy on the other end, he knows the industry. He's older than I am. He knows business administration. The company is doing well. It is financially healthy. And he has the ability to take over some of our burdens. And it was like a godsend. But I could only keep 10% of my shares. And I said, you know what? I'm not giving up the whole business. I'm giving up 90%, but 10% of something big is better than 100% of something that's not great at all. the company that I built, and I'm not saying this because it was my project, it was my handiwork and my effort, but the company that I built is a great company. The brand has great values. It looks great. It presents well. Our customers are extremely happy. And for me, those things are important, especially the customers. Happy customers, you can have everything in the world, but if your customers aren't satisfied with you and with your company, you know, it's all for nothing. And I've always gone out on that perspective that um, you need to ensure that your customers feel welcome. When they have a problem, they must have the peace of mind that they can phone you, WhatsApp you, email you, whatever channels you choose. They must have that peace of mind that they will get that support and that their problems will be resolved. We've had clients who initially were extremely irritated with us, mostly because they themselves didn't understand the issues that they had. And then you're the worst, and they want to cancel their service and whatever. And then when we're done with them, they are so happy and so grateful that they stay with you for as long as they can. And that's also something for another video. So I gave up 90% of the company, and now we actually have the deal that I initially proposed. So our salaries are no longer paid by my company or the company that I started. It's paid by the new investors company. So we've taken those expenses out of the business. We're busy diminishing and eliminating some of the other expenses. We're consolidating some infrastructure. All things that will help towards ensuring that the business remains financially liquid. There's still a lot to do, but we're finally, I think, in a place where I have a bit of peace of mind. There is, of course, there's always going to be some difference in opinion. The way that we support our clients and the way that the new company supports their clients. The support desks, the way that works. Some policies that we have and policies that the new company has. All of those things, those are differences, and we need to resolve those and consolidate. And obviously, I actually I tell people I take offense when people say that the business is my baby, because it's not my baby. Yes, I've worked very hard on it, and I've put a lot of myself into the business. And you can easily confuse it for being my baby, but it's my legacy. It's my retirement plan. It's my passion. So yes, you can confuse it for being my baby, because it's a very important part of me. I put a lot of effort into it, and I think I will probably always give this business priority above everything else. So there's a lot of challenges there, and just finding the right investor is a really difficult task, especially if you're in a difficult situation. But there's a lot of lessons to be learned out of this whole journey. I mean, I told you a lot of the things that was going on the surface, and those are, I think, are a bunch of the important things. But there's a lot that I've learned about business that I think, had I known that when I started the company, things might have gone a lot different. And those are the kinds of things that I really want to share with you on this channel. Because if I make those mistakes, I know other people are going to make those mistakes. They don't teach you these things in school. They do teach you some of these things in university. And, if you do, like I decided on the age of 38 to do a BCom, then, you might learn those things in that BCom. But there's a lot of things that you will learn by experience. But I actually believe that if you combine what you learn in experience with a formal sort of education, a lot of these things are going to make a lot more sense to you. And I will do my utmost best on this channel to ensure that I communicate these things with you. I think there's some insights there, things that I've realized, especially now that I'm doing the BCom, that previously I knew of it. I didn't know the terms. I didn't know why these things are like they are. But what I can tell you is go and look up or go and read up and watch videos or study, whatever you want to do, economics. Because economics is the subject that has taught me so much about how business works and put things into perspective for me. Right, so I think I am way over what I initially intended this video to be, but I think this is a good background of where I come and what I've experienced. And I hope that even this video, although it was a lot of my story, has been insightful to you. And I really do hope that you click on the subscribe button and on the bell button so that you get notifications. Because I really want to share a lot more with you. There's a lot that I haven't shared. And I look forward to it. And I hope to welcome you back on my next video.